Hello, friends at Osher. It's a pleasure to connect with all of you for the third session on Siddha consciousness. Today's discussion is on climate anxiety, global warming, and its impact on students. The four areas that we want to cover today will be climate change, climate equity, climate anxiety, and climate action. So, if we look back at the last few hundred years, as far as carbon dioxide emissions, it was extremely low throughout human history. Now, only in the last 120 years or so, we are seeing a dramatic increase in carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere due to human activity. This graph shows from 1900 how things have dramatically worsened, especially from Western Europe and from United States. Africa, Asia have not contributed until the last 50 years or so. Now they are also starting to increasingly contribute to carbon dioxide emissions. This, you could say, is polluting the atmosphere, but also this is where most of the industrial progress and development have occurred to even define countries as defined or as developed countries or developing countries. So this is where it comes from. This is the side effect of progress. So now, instead of 100 years, I'm going back several thousand years. When we go back in human or the history of the world, what we are seeing over millennia is carbon dioxide levels have been fluctuating. We have had about 6 or 7 cycles. Each time there is a increase in carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, global warming happens. But each time it has stayed within this range of carbon dioxide level, parts per million in the atmospheric air. So that is what determines world temperatures over the last 800,000 years.
Dr. Chakalingam.
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you. I wanted to let you know that what we are seeing on our screen is, we can see what your next slide is. I'm not sure if you're in presenter mode or not.
Ah, thanks for reminding me.
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Let me try to do it a slightly different way. Is it again full screen?
Yeah, that looks better.
That's excellent.
So we came up to a few 100,000 years ago, and now we want to see the sudden increase that we are seeing only in the last few decades. Since 1950, for the first time, we've crossed this limit in the last 800,000 years. And not only crossed it, we have actually already nearly doubled what it has ever been. This is the scary aspect of specifically carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. So we know climate continues to change. It's not a constant thing. But in the last 650,000 years, we've had 7 glacial advances and retreats which correlate with the carbon dioxide emissions. An abrupt end to the last ice age about 11,000 years ago marked the beginning of our human history, because we started agriculture about 10,000 years ago, and then we started living in more groups so we could develop culture and tradition and arts and music, and that's where human civilization has progressed, because we had this chance about 11,000 years ago. The planet's temperature has risen 2 degrees within the last 40 years. This is dramatic. This is directly due to carbon dioxide emissions by human beings. I'm seeing a question in the chat box. How did they measure carbon dioxide levels 7,000 years ago? We humans are getting too smart for our own good. This is because of levels of carbon dioxide in fossils that fossilized at that time period. I think somewhere there we are able to get a measurement when those things we are able to carbon date and other things. So we are able to measure carbon dioxide levels in different time periods based on that. Excellent question. What about human activities? Why do these chemicals matter? The greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and other things in the atmosphere, when it is at a low level, like you see in the left side of the picture, the sun's radiation a lot of times is able to escape back into the space. However, when these greenhouse gases increase, like they are now dramatically increasing in recent decades, what ends up happening is just like a car with the glasses raised up in a summer day, we feel the car is so much hotter because of glasshouse effect. We are seeing these greenhouse gases retain the solar heat, prevent it from escaping back into the outer space. So global warming dramatically increases with exponential increase in these greenhouse gas levels. Okay. So this leads to this vicious cycle of oceans becoming warmer, leading to faster melting of the snow, glaciers retreat, sea levels rise, oceans become more acidified. This leads directly to harsher summers and colder winters. So both become more challenging every year. You may ask, did somebody go and measure the temperature of the sun? And that also has been done. That is the yellow curve that you're seeing. In the last 100 years that we've been measuring the energy output of the sun itself, in the last 2-3 decades, thankfully, solar energy coming from the sun is actually declining. Unfortunately, that is not helping us, because whatever we are getting as solar output within the Earth's atmosphere is causing the temperatures within our atmosphere to only go up despite the sun's output going down. This is making it even more of a scary situation. Now, when we say carbon dioxide emissions, what are the sectors that contribute to this? Majority of this is for 3/4 of this is for energy. Of that energy, it's in buildings, both commercial and residential buildings, as well as for transportation, mostly road transport, whereas shipping and aviation also contribute significantly. Industrial, mostly iron and steel, petrochemical, and other industries contribute to a significant portion. Agriculture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. I was under the impression that agriculture is turning barren land into farmland, and that's actually helpful to reduce greenhouse emissions. But forestry and land use is a big challenge, and agriculture also involves feeding livestock. Of the current agricultural produce, can anyone guess how much we are using towards human consumption versus feeding animals, livestock? We are interested in feeding animals because we are growing them for food. Can anyone make a guess what percentage goes to feed livestock? You'll have to unmute yourself. Of all the agriculture that's happening, at least in the US, anyone?
Is it corn?
Yes, corn, maize, rice, but corn especially, that's the thing that I recently looked up. What percentage of farmland we are raising crops to feed animals rather than for humans? What percentage goes to animal feeds?
More than 50% maybe.
Yes, 75% is going for feeding animals. So we are raising farmland mostly to feed animals in this country. Why is that? Is it our love for the animals? No, it is because we want to use the animal for meat. That is what it is. This is first human being landing on Mars. Do we know when it happened? It hasn't yet happened. So this is only our imagination. We are paying a lot of money to fund this research through so many ways. We don't even want to get into that. But man believes that going to Mars is our next step forward. That's why we are spending billions and billions of dollars into research that might at some future point, we don't even have a set date yet, that would potentially allow us to first land on Mars. But then comes several fold extra expenses in trying to even make it habitable. We don't think it is going to happen anytime in the next several years, several decades. But that is our future vision. But in the meantime, coming back to carbon dioxide emissions, this is breakdown of various countries. You may see that China is already number 2 in carbon dioxide emissions, Russia 3, Germany 4, 5, UK. India is in the top 10. And this is overall carbon dioxide output. But this does not tell us what is the individual role of the per capita, which means per person, how much is the emission. Canada is already more than the United States. Japan is only half of that. And if you see, United Kingdom is only a third of Canada or the United States, whereas this is also equally developed country of the Western system. This is where a lot of the industrial changes started in the UK. So how come they are at 1/3? And India is even lesser. So if you see per capita, we are much, much lesser and we are only growing country. So China, which is developed much more, we are seeing a dramatic increase, several fold compared to India. So why I'm showing this is there are some decades lag between the Western world and the Asian countries, especially countries in Southeast Asia. So we are going to see a significant increase in CO2 emissions from these countries in the name of development. So overall emissions per capita is still very low for India compared to China, which has gone up in the last 2-3 decades. US has actually been coming down in the last 4-5 decades. And United Kingdom in the last 4 decades has come down significantly. This is per capita. They've done much, much better than China or the US. So this is one more quick view of the same challenges. Here we are also placing the global population. China is much more populated than the United States. So, but per person, they are doing lesser, but population-wise they are more. So they are already at US levels. Whereas India, huge population, second in the world, per capita they are at very low levels, only 1.7 compared to 14 in the US. But because India is only a couple of decades maybe behind the US, we might expect so much more increase in carbon dioxide emissions over the next few decades. So how are we going to say countries that have not even started, like Africa, they are at 0.7. They've not even started much of the changes that have happened 100 years ago in the Western US and Western Europe. Changes have not even begun in Africa. So how are we to say, living in the US, that Africa should not be emitting carbon dioxide? Because for them to grow and industrialize and build roads and networks and other things to become developed, they need to find greener technologies moving forward. That is where we're trying to balance this. Make sense? Any questions? This slide has too much information. I'm just quickly showing it to you. So to summarize all that we discussed so far, 25% of our greenhouse emissions come from energy consumption for heating and cooling of our homes, agricultural land, another 20%, industries, 17%, transportation is 14%. Other things are smaller contributions. So that is the summary of our human contribution to global warming over the last 200 years. We asked this question, how come UK is doing better? The reason is they decided in 1990 that they are going to halve their carbon dioxide footprint. The footprint has come down by 50% in the last 20 years. They've accomplished this. And this is where UK and Canada were very close, whereas Canada has continued to increase its carbon dioxide emission rates, whereas UK has dramatically reduced it. And in the UK Parliament last year, this girl went and spoke. Her age was only 15 in 2018. Greta Thunberg. She's a Swedish girl who's now only, 19 years old? But she was invited to go and talk in the British Parliament. And this is what she said to the politicians. Our emissions have to stop if we are to stay below 2 degrees Celsius of warming. And she said, I mean stop, not just slow down. And then we have to turn to negative figures of carbon dioxide emission to reverse the pollution that we have caused to our atmosphere. This rules out most of today's politics. This is what this 18-year-old girl is telling politicians in their own parliament. So this is the amount of passion that children are bringing to their future world. And this has become FFF, the Fridays for Future. And this is a global movement that started with this one girl, where their goal is to stop at 1.5 degrees, whereas already we are at 2 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to stop below 1.5 Celsius increase, global warming, ensure climate justice and equity, which means developing countries should not be forced to adopt green methods. I mean, should not be forced to avoid development in the name of protecting the atmosphere. They have to be given resources to develop in a green way. So that is what is climate equity about, and listening to the best available science. So this is what these children are skipping school and striking throughout the world now. This movement has become global. On Fridays, they are mobilizing their resources and trying to take ownership for future generations to do the right thing. So because this movement started in Europe and because UK participated in this more aggressively, we are seeing that their contribution to global warming is dramatically lower compared to 1990. Whereas other countries are still catching up in the Western world. So this is so many generations are participating, but still it ends up being mostly children that are taking this up. Students who are in between the age of 15 and 25 especially are the most active group in this fight against climate change. And there are published evidence for this. This is a study that was reported recently looking at respondents from 10 different countries from different parts of the world, where majority of the kids are feeling emotions of sadness, anxiety, anger, powerlessness, helplessness, and guilt. And this is related to climate change. And that is directly affecting their daily functioning and their health. And these negative thoughts are reported in 75% of children about future. So this is across the globe that we are seeing this. And when we ask children whether they feel reassured or betrayed by their own governments, their answer in all these 10 countries was that their sense of betrayal was much more than their sense of reassurance that their government is doing something good for them. The closest, I think it looks like, is Finland, where they are feeling their country is doing sufficiently. So this is what is climate anxiety. It is widespread in children and young people up to the age of 25 years of age, it impacts their day-to-day living, and there is a perceived failure by their own governments to respond to the actual crisis that is affecting their future. Okay? Any quick thoughts here before we go on to a slightly different discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Chris.
So, yeah, I have heard that, the new generation is very worried about all those things that our generation and the previous generation is making of the world. Is there already effects showing up on their health due
Yes.
to that?
Yes, that is what I just showed you, that they are reporting higher levels of anxiety and hopelessness. So this is going to make life so much more challenging when they become adults. Their level of trust in their society, all of this becomes a challenge.
So it's still like on their emotional level, not on the physical level.
I think they are that resilient that hopefully if the world itself becomes greener and they are finding that they are making a difference, then their anxiety may get better. But this is a very new problem. Children were not taking this up until 2018, until this girl who started this in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a movement that began with her in 2018. So we are talking about very, very new changes that are coming about.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to request people to mute yourself unless you are talking. Can you mute everyone for us, Mike? I'm seeing one.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm seeing one chat.
okay, that's everyone muted, and I think that got you. There we go.
Yeah, I've unmuted. So people can unmute yourself when you're chatting, but I'm going to request you to mute yourself so we don't hear any extra noise. So is carbon dioxide levels related to MFG industry? I remember in the 70s, we all rode our bikes each Friday to stop air pollution. I was in high school. So this climate action you have started so many years ago. Congratulations. MFG, is it manufacturing? That we are talking, I'm not too sure what MFG means. I guess it's manufacturing. So yes, industry is one of the biggest. Yes, industry is one of the biggest reasons for carbon dioxide emissions, at least 25%, whereas 25% comes from automobile, 25% from heating and cooling of our homes and offices. Another 25% comes from agriculture. So these are the four biggest sectors: industry, fuel for our transport, heating and cooling, and our food. Okay. So I'm so glad that you started this in the 1970s to reduce air pollution. So we'll go on and look at this beautiful way of recognizing our individual or our household's contribution every year to carbon dioxide footprint. So home energy contributes in a typical household about 12 tons of CO2 emissions, driving about 11 tons, food 11, and flying about 2 tons. But then in our home, we try to minimize all of these things over the last 5 years. So I try to put in some numbers which are lower than what was typical. So our home energy usage is probably much lesser than a typical US household. Our driving, we try to minimize in several ways. And our food consumption, we are not fully vegan, but we are mostly plant-based. So our carbon dioxide emissions from that is also much lesser than most households. And our flying, we try to minimize that as well. So doing these things compared to a typical US household, we are at about half the carbon dioxide footprint. This is what I was able to roughly estimate using this scale. So Mike will be able to share this with you if you want to play around with this to see how you can make a difference in your day-to-day living. So from this same website, I was able to find as an individual, by stopping driving, we can reduce 6 tons of carbon dioxide emission to the atmosphere every year. Cutting down on home heating and cooling, 5 tons. By moving from a standard American diet towards a vegan, plant-based food, we can reduce significant amount of carbon dioxide emissions. And if we stop flying, we can significantly reduce it too. So there are several things we can choose to minimize and prioritize if we want to limit global warming. Global warming is not just for the politicians and governments and policymakers. It's also for the individual to start directly participating in. So Kay, this is our friend. I hope she has joined us by this point when I'm sharing her picture. Hi Kay, I met her yesterday because last week when we were discussing about consciousness and about artificial intelligence, she discussed how she is building a community in Colombia, which is for the first time, our small town has not come across this type of communal living. So yesterday evening, I went to meet her, and one of the people living in that 8 or 10 people community, this is the other friend who is now building a home in this community in town. This is all in downtown Colombia, where about 8 or 10 homes will be so close to each other that people will share their neighbors' challenges and happiness and anxieties and successes and gardening and playing pickleball. So many things people are going to be able to share in this community. So you don't just buy a home in this neighborhood, you buy a home in that community. Is Kay here with us to say hi to our group? Not yet, maybe?
No, I'm here. Good morning.
Hey, Kay.
Hi.
You want to say something?
You can notice on this house right above your head, the solar panels are on that roof. So all of these homes also have solar panels, and they are built with, we've included every aspect of the climate action plan for the city of Columbia, and we've incorporated those in this little community. So we're a half a mile from Gerbs so that they can walk to the grocery store. We have solar power. We have high efficiency heating systems. So we cut down, and we have green space for gardening. And every inch we've used for something. We have organic apple trees. We have a place for common garden, and also for a place where we're going to put native habitat for bees. So all these components we've integrated very smoothly into this pocket neighborhood. So it's been it's been very rewarding to be able to show how this can occur, that each person can do something to contribute to the securing a better sustainability and to the decrease in the climate problem.
Congratulations, Kay. You shot me an email saying you are my student and you would like me to visit your place. But the truth is, I am learning way more than you are from this interaction. The last time I went grocery store shopping by foot was when I was growing up as a kid in India. My mom is here. She would send me to pick up a couple of things so that we'll have some food for that dinner. I'll just walk like 5 minutes and get some groceries. But in this country that I've lived since 97 back and forth, I've not done any walking for groceries. I have to take the car because it's not close enough. I've not even thought about picking up groceries by foot. But this is so nice that in Colombia, you are thinking about the grocery store being so close by. So it's all in small steps that we take. And by committing to, see, even when we buy a car, I heard a friend of mine picked up Subaru. This was 10 years ago because they have a very low carbon footprint. I've not kept up to speed on that. Now we have electric cars, which are even greener. So the technologies keep changing. But even when we buy coffee and food, we can make choices based on the amount of responsible harvesting, farming that they are doing. So these are mindful aspects. So these are also part of consciousness and self-inquiry. It is not like we sit and understand ourselves alone. We have to, at the same time, understand our role and responsibility towards our own community and the global future. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll keep going on for a couple more minutes. Now, the next question is, in Bill Gates solving for zero film series, he says, concrete is the largest producer of greenhouse gases. The Earth is building the equivalent of one New York City in size each month. This is how much concrete building is happening. Yes. And I heard Bill Gates also wrote a book which came out last year that looks at the future based on current solutions that are available and what new discoveries have to happen to become carbon neutral in the next 20-30 years. So that book came out last year. I have plans to go pick up that book and read it so that I'll understand the technological solutions. But individually, I really believe, just like Kay here in this picture, we all can participate directly in making this world greener based on today's resources by just turning our attention inwards. So that is why we are emphasizing that. But I'm sure there are going to be some beautiful solutions for all of us to embrace as technology only is getting better in this sphere. Plastic is something that I've always tried to minimize, but then there are so many levels of global warming due to plastics. We have to remember that plastics come from fossil fuels. That itself is fossil fuel. Producing the finished bottles or plastic bags, that process also consumes so much natural resources. And then when they are being sold and consumed at the consumer level, and when we say we are recycling plastic, can anyone guess globally how much plastic, not only globally, even in the developed countries, how much of our recycled plastic bottles are actually being recycled? Anyone wants to guess? India and other countries where they don't have resources, it's less than 10% of recyclable plastic is not being recycled. In Western countries with better resources, how much of the plastic is being recycled? Anybody wants to guess? If poor countries are doing 10%, the best countries, how much can they do?
3%.
How much?
3%.
No. Countries like India are close to 5 to 10%. So Western countries are closer to 15 to 20%. But still 80% of recycling is not happening, even in the Western world. So we think we are recycling. We are just putting them in the blue bags and leaving them outside. But the statistics are saying 80% opportunity is lost. So the best way to minimize plastic pollution is to minimize procuring, getting things that are made with plastic in the first place. And then dumping and burning, and even when they are out exposed to the sun, there is so much chemicals eluding from the plastic waste that directly pollutes the atmosphere. So this entire plastic cycle is filled with challenges to our atmosphere and to our earth. Minimize the plastic is what we are saying. So this may be the future. Spider silk film and seaweed, I learned recently, may cut down by 50% household plastic waste. But these are not yet available. But these are coming up in the near future. What is available is in my hand. This is from 2 days ago when I was in Disneyland with my daughter. Every day we were getting 30,000 steps because it's a huge place, Disney World in Florida, Epcot and Animal Kingdom, every day 30,000 steps. So this is all the water I consumed in this one plastic bottle. So this I took from home. This plastic bottle is back with me. So there was no buying of any drinks or juices or bottled water. So this is my simple way of minimizing my carbon footprint. So I'm just trying to remind you. And whenever I see this, I'm happy because this machine is keeping count of how many plastic bottles this machine has saved. If a machine on the wall can save plastic, I'm sure we can also save more plastic wastage. Every time we pay a little more attention to how much we are using. And then these are the other ways that I've done in the last 20, 30 years, whatever contribution I can to minimize my carbon footprint. As much as possible, I take opportunity to carpool for my children or for my wife, and then minimize trips every day wherever I'm trying to go. I try to combine work with shopping or whatever else so that we don't make extra trips. I enjoy biking about 5 miles to office several times. Whenever the weather is good and I have an opportunity to bike to work, I do that. And working from home, this we did in the COVID, but otherwise being doctors, a lot of times we have to be in the hospital. But now we are, Wednesday is my echo day, which means I read echocardiograms without actually seeing patients. So a lot of that might be possible from home moving forward. Now coming to food, in the last 5 to 10 years, I've cut down my meat consumption by 95%. So still, I wouldn't say I'm vegan, but all my food choices, whenever I can make them plant-based, I make it that way. So that is one way. And then try to get foods locally, seasonal food choices, preferably rather than getting things that I want to have only this type of food. And then food wastage, I guess because I grew up and my mom is here today, she taught me when I was a kid, wastage is not acceptable to her. So I tell my children the same thing. So we make extra effort to minimize wasting. And I would say in the last 47 years of my life, food wastage has been close to zero throughout my life. And energy, we minimize heating and cooling at home. So the winter months, our home is a little colder compared to most of our friends' homes. And in the summer months, our home is a little warmer. But I feel that is okay. It's not like maintaining the ideal temperature is necessary. It's okay to experience summer and winter. We don't have to maintain the exact same temperature throughout the year, which means in fall and in spring, we are able to turn off our heating and cooling completely for several weeks, maybe even months. And then flying, we minimize. And when we fly for leisure, I see where I can combine that with work. And when we go for work-related academic meetings, I combine some leisure with it. So because there is so much new things to see and do in work-related. And when there is an opportunity to combine the two, I feel it is a great way to mix both of those things. And minimalism. Does anyone want to talk about minimalism? Self-inquiry is what this whole thing is about. The 4-week series on Siddha consciousness is about self-inquiry, asking the question, who am I? What is life about? So you'll hear about it next Monday again. But minimalism, anybody wants to tell us a little bit about it? Anybody practices minimalism? Someone who hasn't? Somebody's unmuting themselves.
Kind of do.
Yes, Chris. How do you practice minimalism? We'd love to hear about it.
I started doing like a major hike pilgrimage in Spain, where you learn how to only carry what you need for your daily consumption. And then after that, you just start to question everything, you know, like if you're going to buy something, it's like, well, I need it, I have, or, you know, or just have a minimum things and just go in the grocery store, just buy what you need, you know, go with a list.
So how long have you been like this? How many years?
10 years already or more.
So you mentioned something, I didn't catch it properly. 10 years ago, you went on a trip in Europe?
Yes, I did what they call a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. It's a pilgrimage that there's several ways to do it. But anyway, it's just like for people do for all different kinds of reasons. And mine end up being a vacation with my kids, but you know, it made a change in everybody.
Amazing. See,
Yeah,
this
so like I
change,
even see my kids, they are like that.
the
They are very
difference.
minimalist.
Excellent, Chris. See, the difference between what you experienced 10 years ago and what we are doing today is very direct. Here, it is a slide where you are seeing the word minimalism. Now it is a theory, then it is a concept, then you're going to read some more, and then you're going to slowly think about it from the logical mind. Whereas you got to become minimalistic through experience, through your own life. So that is a direct transformative change, which I don't have the opportunity to engage in. But because you shared your experience, you made this much more experiential for all of us. So thanks so much.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because, like you said, it's not a major change, you know, in everything, but sometimes in just aspects. So another example that I have is in regarding to traveling. Me and my husband, with this COVID, we decided to get an RV. So that's how we've been traveling. We got a small RV. And I belong to a group of people that have the same kind. And it's very interesting how everybody, most of the people complain there's not enough space to put everything they have. And me and my husband was like, we have plenty of space. We have empty drawers. There's no like, what do you mean there's not enough space? So I can see that, you know, this is there on us to be very, you know, just take what we need, no more. If you need it, we can just go and get it. Stuff
Beautiful.
like that.
So minimalism, you explained it so beautifully. I have a few more slides, so we'll come back to what your experience is very soon. So less is more. This we know from the life of Buddha, not from the things he taught and the religion and other things. You see in his hand the Buddha bowl. What it is a small earthen pot that was his possession throughout his life. And why did he possess it? Because he does not cook. He does not have favorite foods. He goes asking for a donation or begging for food. This is what he did throughout his life. So this is his austere way of living. And the concept here is understanding life more profoundly. For that, he practiced this deep level of minimalism. The only possession is that bowl for his entire lifetime. 2000 years ago, somebody was brave enough to do that. And then here I'm taking you back even further, 5,000 years back, where our Siddha consciousness starts. Siddha starts so far behind that it did not even feature in this timeline that somebody created. So I had to actually add Siddha here to point out where in time it comes. We know Chinese medicine, Egyptian medicine date back 3,000 to 5,000 years, but Siddha concepts have been around even prior to that. There is documented evidence for a lot of these things. And we know from these traditions, see, Buddha practiced this type of self-inquiry. The word Siddha itself means self-inquiry, trying to perfect the individual being. And that is not through more pills or Siddha medications. That is only for treating ailments. Majority of Siddha focuses on enhancing the normal, healthy human being towards higher consciousness. So that is what this concept has been. But it is also a scientific system of medicine where even until today, people go through medical school, get master and PhD. And it's a science of ancient traditional medicine. But how far it goes behind is what I'm trying to show you here. And now the most recent study on how many aspects of the Siddha and the Buddhist type of thinking, only that word called minimalism, how it is helping a few people they studied, and they are saying it does not produce one or two benefits. It creates a web of benefits. It makes us more competent. Like Chris was able to travel in her RV better than her friends because she needed lesser things. More autonomy because we need lesser things. And not only our physical space is clearer, our mind itself becomes clearer when our needs are lesser. We become more self-aware. This is higher consciousness through positive emotions, which is a positive feedback cycle. Is this clear, or should we stop here for any quick thoughts on this concept that now the scientific world in positive psychology is getting to recognize the value of what we have been aware of for the last 5,000 years since our part of the world. I'm sure Chris did not learn this from that pilgrimage. It was her own experience. So these words have not directly been taught in every religion. But if you see, all the religions in the world talk about living a simple life directly in relationship with our natural world, connecting with our people around us. So all the things we discuss in some way go back to this type of philosophy. So now, my daughter, who's a 12-year-old for whom I went to Disney 2 days ago, I was talking about this presentation coming up today. And now she has learned from this discussion that she wants to now minimize water wastage. Food, she does not want to waste any chance she gets. She wants to be careful about that. Electricity, she says she will turn off all the lights for sure before going to school every day. And on her way to school, I was discussing the same thing today morning. And I told her, if people had taken up this self-inquiry 5,000 years ago, we would have avoided the type of pollution that is happening in the last 100 years. But she said, why, Dad? If people had been minimalists for 5,000 years, won't we have just postponed this inevitable crisis? We might have been more introspective and we might have slowed down science. But instead of happening in 2020, would it happen 5,000 years from today? Anybody wishes to answer that? Would being minimalist, being more self-aware, only postpone the inevitable carbon footprint and global warming? Or could there have been a different way? Anybody wishes to unmute? Are you only delaying the inevitable global warming is what I'm asking.
Dr. Anand, this is Sivasalam.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't think it's inevitable. I'm a transportation professional and I've done a lot of work on like reversing emissions from the transportation sector. And I think if we have I think to make it short, yeah, I think if we are continue to be minimalist, I think it's not inevitable. I mean, population growth and things like that will, of course, put some strain, but nature itself, I think, could have balanced it out or will continue to balance it out. But we are now, I guess, going so fast against nature, it's not able to repair itself. That's
beautifully said. Beautifully said. So this balance where we can still continue to advance while being responsible for the environment. So that comes from our own intuitive inner nature that Chris connected while she went to Europe on a pilgrimage. Like that, if we had followed our intuition over the last 5 to 10,000 years, we would have been much, much better off. Somewhere along the road, our aggression or anxiousness to compete against our fellow human beings took precedence over our responsibility towards our natural earth. But now we are recollecting that importance. So if we had stayed mindful throughout our evolution in the last several thousands of years, we would have never come to this point. I believe we would have continued to grow beautifully and bypassed this problem. We are here, but we can still overcome it, like Sivasalam is reassuring us. So nice. I'm seeing one chat. Let's quickly see it. Have local leisure activities, minimize travel, be content to use glass and metal containers, reduce consumption of all kinds, buy only consumables, don't buy new dwellings, reduce remodeling, building and non-consumables are not biodegradable. Excellent thoughts, excellent thoughts. So nice to see these suggestions. So since I was in Florida, I'm influenced by the Disney concepts of vertical farming. It's been around for years, but I just heard about it in Epcot the day before, so I thought I should bring it here. Vertical farming means instead of growing things on the land, they are building it on the walls. And this is what is vertical. growing whatever lettuce or cabbage across the entire height of the wall. And thereby they are able to reduce water 98%, land usage 99%, wastage of food 100%, and light energy requirement itself is only 1/10 through vertical farming. This looks like the way of the future. I'm not a specialist in agriculture, so when I read about this recently, I was so excited to see these concepts. And this is from this website. And this is another thing that Epcot taught me, aquaponics. On top, you see plant, below you see fish. Aquaculture is raising fish in tanks. Hydroponics is cultivating plants instead of on soil, on water. So how these things combine is in this method. Fish produce a lot of wastage. Microbes work on that wastage to convert it into fertilizer, which is needed to grow plants very well. And what the plants does is filters the water, and the fish can consume fresh water. And in this process, we are able to reduce wastage. In very, very little water is needed to grow plants and fish. And maintenance is extremely low, reduces the occurrence of pests. And this type of aquaponics requires no external chemical input. So this can be done at home. And this is that website that I picked up. So there are so many new and innovative ways for us to reverse the carbon footprint that has been increasing over the last 100 years. And we talked about vertical and aquaponics, and they've now shown that both can be combined. Here you have the fish, and here you have the vertical farming. And all of this can be done at our own home if we choose to do it. So if we look at, anybody wishes to talk about this before the last concept I have, and then we'll be done. Anybody wishes to discuss on vertical agriculture and aquaponics or anything else that you are trying that you would like us to learn and explore?
I have a comment.
Yes, yes.
In my experience, these things are not new. They're not new approaches. They've been around for a long time. And the kind of agriculture that is practiced in our country is so dominant and so unseen. It's just so taken for granted that food appears, even though it's using so much of our resources. It's hard for me to imagine enough people taking up aquaponics or hydroponics to make enough of a difference. Does that make sense?
Sure. I hear your concern. I myself try to practice anything that I bring slides on. The last 5-6 slides, I just put it now. I don't do any aquaponics or vertical agriculture. We don't have even a kitchen garden at home because I've been running around, and my wife is a physician too, and she's running. It's not an excuse, but we don't have the opportunity to do this. Right. But why I bring this is I have some very good friends I've seen in the last 15 years in Colombia who are also working for the university, and they have different jobs, but they have a good home kitchen gardens, which are not that time consuming. They've learned how to do it efficiently, and their grocery shopping is way lesser. They don't need to go get vegetables and fruits, and they're able to harvest enough and store it for the winter, that even in the winter months, they have their own home produce that they can go through until the next season starts. So we have friends in town who are doing this. So a lot of opportunities there. Once we pay more attention to it, we'll find opportunities to do a little better. And when we take ownership for it, then the global markets, it's not run or orchestrated by some big person or company. It's all starting at the grassroots level. Individuals, we can definitely make some changes, I feel. So there is one quick chat. Do the aqua and vertical farming require a lot of plastics and manufactured industry to consume as opposed to traditional farming and gardening? I don't think so. These can be done at home, and the pictures I show you are investments that you could sustain for several years. So I believe these are not going to be plastic intense in any way. This might be made of plastic, I'm not sure. But again, I'm not an expert in this, but I don't think they require too many things that need to be recycled plastics or anything like that.
And Dr. Anand, again, I wanted to comment.
Uh-huh.
I think these are things that you do in a place where land is not available, such as say Manhattan or really urbanized, very urbanized area. When you have land, I don't think they are efficient or even needed. And having said that, another thing I've seen is where people are using old bottles, like soda can bottles, instead of these kind of plastic apparatus, where they've made their own way of growing things. So I think I've seen it in India where they have set up bottles on the wall and grow things out of that. So.
Excellent, excellent. Excellent points. So the last concept I wanted to touch upon is the individual's food choices. So when we look at how much carbon dioxide emission there is for different food items that we may choose to have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, we are looking at a very high level of carbon dioxide footprint for lamb and beef. Even cheese has a high carbon footprint. Pork, salmon is lesser, turkey is lesser, consuming chicken is lesser. Like that, if you see, you can still get extremely healthy food and you go down to 1/40th the carbon footprint, up to lentils and tomatoes and tofu and things like that. So this is what is something the world will slowly become more and more aware and wake up to. And as just this one girl in 2018 started striking school on Fridays, when the whole generation starts waking up to it, children and grandchildren of many of my patients are inspiring them towards plant-based food choices now. So that is a very welcome change that is coming from the younger generation. This is another very important graph. So I'm going to take a minute to go through this graph. What we are saying here is the risk for heart disease or any disease. 1 being the baseline risk. 1.4 means 40% increased risk for heart problems or health issues and cancer, you can say. And then 0.6 means 40% reduction in risk of heart disease. So this is lesser risk, and right side is higher risk. And here, it's not a scale of 1. Here, the scale is magnified several fold, 10-fold, 100-fold, exponential scale for average environmental impact. So impact is 1, 2 times more, 5 times more, 10 times more impact, 40 times, 100 times more impact on the environment. This is carbon dioxide emission, you can say, or greenhouse gas emission altogether. So what we are seeing is certain processed and unprocessed meats end up being more unhealthy for the individual and at the same time unhealthy for the environment. So the neutral foods might be fish and chicken, lesser harmful effect for the environment. But for the individual, it says it is healthy, but more and more evidence is saying any type of meat might be at best neutral or slightly harmful. Even dairy is considered more. This graph also needs to be updated, is what I'm trying to say. SSB stands for sugar sweetened beverages. So their impact on the environment is extremely low, but they're actually harming our communities by increasing risk for metabolic problems like diabetes. So what ends up being healthy for the world and healthy for our body? Are there some foods which are win-win that ends up being mostly vegetables and fruits, nuts, legumes, whole grain products like quinoa, brown rice, maybe multigrain bread, things like that. So these are the things that if we make again and again as food choices, we'll have good health and reduce our carbon footprint. Make sense? Any questions on this slide? So again, this is, I think, a more recent slide from a similar research saying, compared to a standard diet, greenhouse gas footprint per person per year, instead of 2000 kilograms of carbon dioxide, we can bring it down to less than 200, 1/10, if we choose to become predominantly vegan. Vegetarian itself is nearly half, and predominantly vegan itself is 1/3, and then really vegan. People may sometimes ask, is this going to give us protein? Is this going to give us the micronutrients? The truth is we can get all the, we don't, first of all, have to become 100% vegan. By making more and more choices, we can reduce the carbon footprint dramatically. But even pure vegan, we can be extremely healthy. In fact, there is a movie called Game Changers. This was done by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael, what's his name? Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan and Arnold Schwarzenegger together made a movie called Game Changers. I think it's available on Netflix. What they are now saying after being in the movie industry and fitness throughout their life is that they would do things differently if they had a chance now to build their bodies using plant protein, which they feel is healthier and more sustainable, not only for the atmosphere, but specifically for their own physical health and exercise targets. They would have done better. That's what they are saying. We are seeing world champions like Novak Djokovic, who doesn't eat any meat. He is a #1 in the world in tennis, and he's not needing any meat to beat the rest of the world in 5, 6, 7-hour tennis matches in Wimbledon and French Open. So that is possible. That's what people are now showing us. And then same thing, relative risk of dying increases significantly when we consume meat, whereas when we go more and more plant-based, our chances actually reduce compared to baseline risk. So this is what we are seeing now as science. But 5,000-year-old tradition of Siddha, this is what it said. அண்டம் சுருங்கில் அதற்கோர் அழிவில்லை, பிண்டம் சுருங்கில் பிராணம் நிலைப்படும், உண்டி சுருங்கில் உபாயம் பல பல, கண்டம் கருத்த கபாலியும் ஆமே. What Tirumular is saying in simple terms is, when we start turning our attention inwards, our mind awakens. Losing excess weight, we can live 100 years. After you've lost the excess weight, you've reached the ideal body weight. After that, if you are still able to cut down on food intake, this is the most profound aspect. Cutting down on food intake when you don't need to, then the benefits are too many, is what he is telling us. This is the medical text. And what it says is, it detoxifies pollutants in the atmosphere and in our body, makes our body more fresh and healthy by cutting down on food intake. And not only our body, it directly elevates consciousness. So he is giving us the path and telling us, turn your attention inwards, lose excess weight. After that, still stay minimalist. Then you will reap the benefits of the highest awakening. So this is the 5,000-year medical science and tradition that the Western system, through positive psychology and through whatever scientific methods, that we are slowly recognizing smaller and the value of minimalism and importance of various aspects of this way of living. So the world is in safe hands, your own hands, and at the individual level, we can make all the changes that is needed. And what is this climate action? So I'm not going more into specifics of that, because when we turn our attention inwards, that itself is climate action, and that is empowering and allowing us to reassure our next generations that we are awake enough to make the needed changes in this day and age to counter the challenges of the last 150 years. Thanks so much. I welcome anyone to unmute yourself, especially people who haven't yet lent their thoughts to us. Everyone is welcome to pitch in with your chat, or preferably if you can show your face and chat with us. Now is the time. We have several more minutes. before we close for today. The last session next week is to connect all these concepts: Siddha consciousness, artificial intelligence, the future of humankind, and how global warming and climate action, all of this come together. This is what we're going to discuss next Monday.
I'd like to add one more comment about a program that the City of Columbia has. If you're interested in putting solar panels on your home, so if you're the City of Columbia, if you live in the City of Columbia, they have a wonderful program for where you can secure a loan from them, and the interest rate is 1% for putting solar panels on your home. And if you do that, it takes about 5 years to get to return by paying for it that way before you'll have your solar panels paid off through your energy savings. So it's just not every home, of course, is adaptable to good solar, but it's a good resource if anybody is interested in investing in that and for their home and for energy saving.
I know there are some tax credits also when we file our taxes.
That's true. Additionally to that, you get tax credits for it.
Excellent. So interested people like me, we are going to contact Kay to get more details about who to go to get this solar panel installed. I want to do it for my home now. I'll reach out to you after this.
Okay.
Just, this is Shankari Sivasalam from Baltimore. I'm sure you saw Sivasalam speak, and we have solar panels in our house. I mean, we had it almost for the last 10 years, but in Maryland, it is just more for environmental well-being. We did that, and the electricity that we generate goes into the main grid. And of course, we have seen less charges in our bill, but it was done for environmental reasons, and we really like it. And I think it depends on the house, and you should not have too many trees crowding your roof. So we have that advantage, and a lot of friends, some of them who have come to our place have been encouraged, and they are adapting to it.
Congratulations. Thanks for sharing that experience.
One more thing.
Dr. Chaklingan, just want to share regarding going back to farming. In Colombia, there's programs where people can join some community garden where, you don't know how to do it, but there will be people there that can show you how to do things, how to grow, and you can do that. So, and then you can have your own vegetables growing by you or your neighbors in some of those community gardens. So,
excellent. Excellent.
Things I wanted to add, I don't know, there is a Department of Agriculture has something called Community Supported Agriculture, or CSA. Where you basically support local farmers. It's like a cooperative. You pay upfront certain amount of money, and whatever they produce, they share it with all the members, basically. That's another thing. And I think you touched upon the minimalist. I wanted to say a few things about that. I think it's very important to be, whenever you buy things, or you have to ask the question, is it really necessary, and where does it come from, and how it's produced, and all that. And also sometimes people market things without, or don't be swayed by just marketing, because you have to look at the whole cycle, where it is produced, where it is generated, transport. I think you had one of the food things, where food slide, where it includes all that. So you have to look at the whole life cycle, or the whole, what we call in transportation sector, like well to wheel. So like you can look at tire, but where the raw materials are, how it is produced, and all the energy that is used in that. So you have to look at all that. And I think being minimalist on everything you do, including buying or anything, I think is important.
Excellent. We've been hearing for the last several decades that the US is a consumer-driven economy and a consumption-based country and things like that. But most of the world is moving in that direction in some way or the other. Growth and consumption, all of that seem to be sort of interlinked. But now the one thing that is cutting deeper than all these concepts is climate change, because the world is, especially the children are waking up to climate change. I think all these dogmas may have to face that test of climate anxiety. So if we cannot reconcile what we really pick up in the store towards all these questions, then we might not even have to go that shopping trip. So they say already 60, maybe even 70, 80% of shopping in the US is consumer shopping, which means it's not essential. It is just because we do it, that's it. So when we start really thinking deeper about, do we really need to spend this money? Can we be a little more careful about again and again making these choices to go shopping? Then we may find our overall carbon dioxide footprint goes down that much more. Excellent, excellent. I really enjoyed that minimalism slide where they are connecting it to awareness and other things last year. So once psychologists start talking about this, then world will say, okay, for me to be less anxious, I need to be more minimalist. So once it comes from within us, I think more people will recognize the science behind it. Chris had the luxury of going on a pilgrimage to Europe and learn this, but many others, we want to learn it the scientific way also. So whichever way it is, as long as the world wakes up to the needed changes, I think we are moving in the right direction. Any other interesting ideas we want to talk about? Any questions about what we discussed? Anything at all?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a great niece. My great nephew is in Denmark right now with the CIA. And they've been over there 2 years. And she is telling how the ugly Americans are shopping. She said she'd go in the grocery store and come out with 3 or 4 bags, and she was a glutton because you go every day and you purchase only 1 sack full, and they have like recycling, like 10 containers for everything. And they have a 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're loving it the time they're there.
Amazing. So that window into different cultures comes only when we travel out. See, I grew up in India. When I came to the US, I learned so much more, not only about different cultures, but also about myself. So this opportunity that your niece is having is making her vision broader. So she'll make better choices moving forward, and her children will be wiser because of that opportunity to grow up in a different part of the world altogether. Amazing. Europe, I was in Amsterdam. This is like 7-8 years ago, and I was surprised. Everybody was on the bicycle. I saw very few cars on the road, and people were looking healthier, and even young children, little ones, they were having 2 or 3 little kids in the bicycle. I don't know how they got that many of their kids in the bicycle, but they were all going to school and then to work, and that it's just the way I think people are. And space is so much vaster in the US. Biking is not an option when your office is like 30 miles away. So many things are there that make individual geographic differences in how we do things. But as long as we stay aware and awake and try to make little contributions, I think every day we can contribute to making things a little better for our community. Beautiful. There was any other thoughts, any other quick comments? We still have 10 more minutes, but if nobody has any other thoughts, then we can convene again next Monday, same time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed connecting. Thank you.
There were a couple of chats. I don't know
Sure.
if you saw them.
I don't have access to chat somehow. My screen is sort of blocking it. What are the questions?
Let me see here. Aqua vertical plastics, I think you covered that. Sankari was saying, thank you for the session. And W. Rogers said that they have solar. We have solar on my brother. They give summer energy to the grid, but are still not powerful enough to run a microwave or a hot plate, a small appliance yet. And it goes on, I worry about the environmental effects of war, fuel, metal manufacturing of weapons, and smoke from those bombs. And another thank you. So yeah, I guess they were just some comments.
Yeah, excellent. Congrats, Debbie, for having the solar systems at home. We are going to try and get it soon. This war has been with us since the origin of mankind 200,000 years ago. So war and all that is not new. Worrying about the climate, that is new only in the last few decades. So when we, instead of using the word worry, when we start taking the right appropriate consensus action, the world will become much greener. The wars will come down just to keep it from getting pollution. Say, for instance, India, Diwali has been celebrated for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Diwali means we burst crackers. And India is so populated that that much crackers is only polluting the cities with the smog for days afterwards. So now people in the last few decades, 1 or 2 decades, the firecrackers have come down significantly. So this is the need of the hour, and people are realizing it. And when the next generation says we don't want to burst crackers, we want to preserve our clean atmosphere, then that tradition will change significantly. Most of that crackers will go away, and people may light a lamp and celebrate Diwali that way. So these changes have to happen because that is the need. Just like Diwali, firecrackers go away. I hope wars and bombs and emissions from that will also go away. But it will take some time, but hopefully all that is where we are headed. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks so much, friends. We'll see you next Monday.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.